Hello YouTube. This video is going to be something that I haven't tried before. It's a retrospective for the month of May. I recorded the results of all the matches that I made and also the costs of the tournaments that I played in. So the intent here is to be a discussion about how all of those matches went, and then also about the cost of playing Lorcana and sort of a guideline or roadmap that you might be able to use in your own planning. So to start, I played 17 events in May, uh, which was 74 matches and thereby 185 games. It doesn't always work out that it's exactly 2.5 games per match, but it happens to be that that's what happened here. I played 7 local weeknight events that had an $8 or $10 entry fee, which totaled 20 matches. There was one event where I was late, so I started with a loss, but I'm not counting that as a played match. I was able to play in 8 set championships, one on Saturday and one on Sunday for each of the 4 weekends of May. Um, I also played in the Star City Games 1K in Hartford, Connecticut on Friday of the 3rd weekend. And then I played in the Encounter 1.5K where set 8 was legal. So overall, I went 31-31, or exactly 50% for die rolls. I didn't include any of the top cut matches that I played. In those matches, um, I think I played like 5 on the play-in, 7 on the draw, or something like that. Um, for those 74 matches, I went 53-21, which is 71.6%. In those 185 games, I went 120-65, which would be 64.9%. And it makes sense that the game win percentage is lower than the match win percentage. Um, in a best of 3 format, a game win percentage of 60% does not correlate to a match win percentage of 60%. It's actually a little bit higher. We can see that in the games where I went first, I went 58-22, or 72.5%. In the games where I went second, I went 62-43, or about 59%. Notably, that means that there were 90 games where I went first and 105 games where I went second. As a winning player, you expect this to be the case because when you win, then you're going to be going second in the next game. And then if your opponent goes first on the first game and you win, you go second again. So it's not out of the ordinary that I would have more games where I went second than first. And this delta, the difference between 72.5% and 59%, is generally about where I experience. Um, it's not great. I wish it was a little bit smaller of a window, but that's pretty typical. So starting with the local events, I went 9-11 in die rolls, 14-6 in matches, 32-19 in games. In games where I went first, I went 16-6. And the games where I went second, I went 16-13. So my teammate Orion was helping me compile these numbers a bit, and he remarked it was kind of funny that I had the same amount of game wins, but significantly more losses when going second. And that's kind of just what you expect. Uh, it's very good to go first in games of Lorcana, and again, I played more games going second because when you're a winning player, you play more games going second. For set champs, I went 17-14 in die rolls. A little bit of positive variance for the set champs, but overall, I'm no luckier than anyone else, at least when it comes to die rolls. I went 32-11 in matches, or about 74.4%. In games, I was 72-34. Games going first, I was 35-10. And games going second, I was 37-24. If we compare this, just going back one slide, to locals events, I had an overall higher win percentage, and I'll discuss that a little bit in future slides with the deck selection that I had for events. Um, but notably, I did win more going second at set champs and more going first at set champs, which leads to an overall higher match win percentage and a higher game win percentage. But the delta is pretty similar in terms of 60 versus 77. So for other tournaments, I had mentioned that I played in the Star Sea Games 1K and the Encounter tournament. I was average lucky 5 and 6 in die rolls. 7 and 4 in matches is my worst among the tournament types. 16 and 12 in games, again the worst. Going first, I was 53.8%, and going second, I was 60%, which is, I think, the first time I've ever seen this, but it's a very low sample size of games. Another thing that I'll talk about a little bit more when I get to the Amber Steel section of my slides, which is entirely the encounter. I lost a bunch of games on the play, and I was playing a kind of experimental deck list, so it does make sense that I would lose some of those games. So, Amethyst Steel was my front-runner deck for the format. Prior to set championships, I had, I think it was a 33 match win streak with Amethyst Steel. I basically played it until I lost a match, and then started mixing it up a bit for local events, and continued to play it for the majority of set champs because I was very comfortable with the deck. So I was 19 and 19 in die rolls for 50%. For matches, I was 35 and 14 or 71%. In games, I was 80 and 42 or 65%. Going first, I was 39 and 12 or 76%. And going second, I was 41 and 30 or 58.6%. So a common thing that people talk about with decks is, oh, that deck's a go first deck. I think that's not exactly a fair statement to make about Amethyst Steel. Obviously, you do want to win the die roll because you have a much higher chance to win going first with any deck, and I'll talk about that a bit more in the next slide as well. But winning 58.6% of your games going second is pretty good. So Orion didn't know that I played as much Ruby Sapphire as I did, but I played it for the second set champs that I played in, and then I played it for most of the weekly events during the month of May, because I figured that my local players would not want to just play against Amethyst Steel all the time. And it's also a way for me to, keep my skills sharp and be ready to play whatever deck I think is the best deck to have reps with Ruby Sapphire. So I was 9 and 10 in die rolls, or 47%. I actually had a higher match win percentage. 15 and 5 is 75%. In games, I was 33 and 17, or clean 66%. Going first, I was 15 and 6, or 71%. And going second, I was 18 and 11, or 62.6%. So when you compare these numbers with Amethyst Steel, I did have a worse win percentage going first and a slightly better win percentage going second. But because I only played one set champs, there's only 5 of these matches that are of set champs like tier competition, and the other 15 matches are local, like 3-round event level competition. So I think these numbers are a little bit higher than they would be if I had brought this deck to set champ, like more set champs. In part because I think it's a worse overall deck than Amethyst Steel. I also think I'm not quite as good a pilot with this deck. In part because I just like Amethyst Steel better, but it was a very good choice for set champs, especially towards the end, as Amber Steel was so prevalent. So for the encounter tournament, I just have 5 matches, so I wouldn't take this as a crazy sample size, but it is my worst set of results for any deck archetype. 3 and 2 in die rolls, 3 and 2 in matches, 7-6 in games, 4-3 going first, and 3-3 going second. So for this event, I had played Amethyst Steel with the new 7-cost Sing Together song. I tested a bunch of things. I played 4 Rhino. I played some Goofies, which I wasn't sure how good those would be. And I had never played with Aurora before. I thought that might be a combination with Goofy. And one of the conversations I had with the TFSM promoter after this event was that you can use tournaments as a learning opportunity for future tournaments. So while I want to do well in every tournament that I play in, I'm more focused on having success in Texas. So it's more valuable to me to learn things now and then potentially convert that into success in the future. So for example, I had 2 copies of You Have Forgotten Me in my deck for this tournament. Uh, I think they were very bad. The situations where I played them, I ended up losing those games. I think it's too tempo negative to be spending resources not affecting the board in this deck, and a little bit too win more to have it as a plan to play it after you've had your opponent discard and draw 3, and that's good information to have. So what did it cost? Um, Across the 8 set champs, you can see the entry fees located up top, but they totaled $190. Star City Games 1K was the most expensive tournament over this time period at $43.60 after melee fees, and the Encounter tournament was $31.80 after local tax. Across 4 locals in Groton, I spent $32, and 3 locals in North Providence, I spent $30. And then, controversially, Dan pointed out that the bottom of this list is all stuff that's sort of just July expenses because that's when we're playing in Texas. But I view it as money that I not necessarily had to, but spent in May to lock in my flight and lock in my room in the Airbnb and be certain that I have a spot in the tournament. So this is the most negotiable part of my spending, where if you just wanted to play local tournaments that were easily in drivable distance, you could stop here. I mean, the Encounter being approximately like 250, 260 miles from me means that that's not the most drivable tournament. And I didn't include the gas costs of going there and back or the toll costs. But um, Texas is sort of the prime example of how tournaments can get very expensive, where the entry fees are dwarfed by the cost of the flight and the cost of the Airbnb. Notably, the Airbnb for this event, I think, has a pool and it's 4th of July weekend, so it's sort of a vacation beyond just being a tournament. But this slide in particular I found interesting because Dick had mentioned that some of his locals have approximately a $20 a month budget for Lorcana, and I was thinking about how I would spend that in one tournament. So this could be a useful slide for someone who is thinking about being more competitive and trying to figure out, what is an appropriate budget to have. I don't think the average player needs to play 17 tournaments in a month or 10 tournaments beyond the local level. Um, Often you're going to play like 4 or something like that. Or because set champs is coming up, you're going to like kind of save up money for the leading month or 2. It's not purely that I just spent money. I did win a bunch of things over this period of time. So I was happily twice the champion of the set champs. I went 8 for 8 on Enchanted Hero cards. I won a little over 60 booster packs, and I think the equivalent of 37 or so dollars in store credit at the Groton store. So if you were to sell all of these things, which I generally do, um, that would cover the cost of the entry fees for all of the tournaments. You're still going to be short some amount for flight and Airbnb, but if you have that money set aside, um, or if you have that money budgeted, you can make it work. One of the things that people don't really talk about is bankroll management. So expected value for events is easier to calculate the smaller an event is. So for as an example, using Magic Online, they had two-player queues where it cost 2 tickets or equivalently $2 to enter, and then the winner of the two-player match got a booster pack. So retail value of that booster pack was $4, but you might trade it to another player for the equivalent of like $3.50. But let's say you could get $4 for it. Well, if you won 60% of your matches, say you played 10 and you won 6 and you lost 4, you put in $20 and you won 6 booster packs. And if you could sell those for the retail $4, you get $24. So you make $4. There are tournaments like known as winner boxes, where let's say it's a $15 entry fee, and then the winner gets a booster box. If you can get $120 for that booster box, and you win 70% of your matches, 0.7 times 0.7 times 0.7 is 0.343, or about a third. And if you said a third of $120 is $40, and your entry fee was $15, you on average make $25 in profit. So if you played in 3, you spent $45, you won 1 box, you sold that box for $120, and then you made $75. So that's all well and good, but you need to have the appropriate bankroll. So for poker players, say you wanted to play at your local casino, $1 small blind, $2 big blind, maximum buy-in, 100 big blinds. So you want to sit down at the table with $200. If you were a professional level player, the general recommendation is that you have something like 100 buy-ins, which would mean you need $200 times 100, or $20,000 to be appropriately bankrolled to sit down and play professionally 1-2. I think 100 buy-ins is not necessarily what the average Lorcana player needs, but if you want to play like $10 locals, I think you need to not be thinking of where that $10 is going to come from. That needs to be like money that you can comfortably spend out of your entertainment budget. So if you were to use like 10 buy-ins, I would say you need like at least $100 to be able to comfortably play locals. Or if your average cost of a set champs is like $25, you should be like comfortable with having put $250 into Lorcana. So Amethyst Steel is obviously a deck that I'm very comfortable with and like a lot. And it also happens to be on the cheaper end of the spectrum for Lorcana decks. So I think if you were to budget like $200 for purchasing the deck and sleeves and a deck box and whatever other things that you need, and then another $200 for miscellaneous like entry fees and playing at like the local and set champs level. If you were a winning player, you could mostly um, like maintain your bankroll. But Lorcana is also a game that you have for fun, like you play for fun, and you should be. It's a lot healthier to view it as entertainment and not a money making enterprise. And I think that's another thing. Um, I happen to be very good, or at least I think very good, based on the numbers that I have at Lorcana. But it's also more important to be a good human being and treat other people with respect. And, um, you know, even if you're like the best Lorcana player, I think on average, you're not making quit your day job money. There'll be some outliers, like whoever win Worlds potentially could retire, but it's a very small minority of players based on the numbers that I have access to that can do Lorcana full time. So hopefully this has been illuminating. I'm happy that I could share this information with people, and hopefully they'll get some benefit from it. And feel free to message me on Twitter at TFM Nunes or in the TFM Discord, or I will try to check the YouTube comments as well. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.